Welcome to the Andy Social Podcast. My name is Andy Dowling. This is episode 167 with legendary Australian guitarist Brett Garsed of John Farnham fame, of Nelson fame, and much, much more. As you can tell, I'm a fan. We're going to get to that conversation really quickly, but first, I have some news to share with you all. So, first of all, if you're new to the podcast and we haven't met before, how you going? In addition to hosting this podcast, I also play bass in the Australian metal band Lord. And if you love a bit of old school heavy metal like Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Queensryche, Halloween, all that sort of stuff, or even some more modern metal like Symphony X, Nevermore, Camelot, all that kind of stuff, a bit of Euro sort of metal sound, or if you just love a bit of metal in general, I've got a feeling that you might like our band. So if you go over to lord.net.au, go and check it out. Lots of guitar solos, lots of great riffs, lots of great sing-alongs, melodic as all hell, but really heavy. So go and check that out over at lord.net.au. But the news, and this is especially for people that have been listening and being so patient with me over the past several months, you will all know, or most of you will know, that I've been drip-feeding limited pieces of information about new music and a new album. And it's been very frustrating for myself and for everyone involved, and especially you, the listener, been very patient with us while we've been slogging it out behind the scenes trying to get this album done. But at the time of recording this intro, tomorrow we're going to be announcing the first single off our brand new album. And by the time this episode comes out, which I'm actually only recording this a week in advance, so for this particular intro, but when you listen to this episode, the announcement will be out and you'll be able to listen to the first single. So the first single off our brand new album is called United. And if you go to lord.net.au/United, you'll be able to hear the song, you'll be able to watch the video clip, and you'll also be able to pre-order one of our special United bundle packs. And there's more details over there. So I'm not going to get into too much of that just now. But if you go to lord.net.au/United, all that info's there and you can get a taste of what this new album's all about. Now, speaking of new album, the new album is called Fallen Idols. And Fallen Idols will be released at the end of April this year, 2019, and pre-orders will be made available sometime beforehand, not just yet. So my understanding at the moment, and I should have checked my messages before I started recording this, but I believe the artwork should also be out as well. I'm not sure. I think it's in the video clip. Anyway, go and have a look. But that's the album title. That's the name of the first single. Go and have a listen, and please, whether it be in the episode comments, whether it be somewhere on the internet, shoot me a message, tweet me, leave a comment on Instagram, whatever it might be, tag me somewhere and tell me what you think of this song. Good or bad, indifferent, whatever. I don't care. Just give me some feedback. And please share this video around. It has been 5 years, getting closer to 6 years since we put out the last full-length studio album. And obviously we've been doing a lot in between. We've released box sets and re-recordings and EPs, and we've done a lot of touring. We did release a live album as well. So we've been very busy, but a studio album's been long overdue. So we need your help. We need your help big time. It's been a long time. The industry's changed so much over the past 5 years. We're even a bit nervous. We're so excited to share this music, and we're really confident that once people hear it, they're going to absolutely love it. So cocky, I know. But we need your help. We need to get that out there. So if you dig it, you love it, you want to support me, you want to support the band, or you just completely are in love with the single and the music, please share it around. Share the video. Do whatever you can to spread the word. I want to make sure as many metal fans get to hear this song and get to find out about the band and in addition, find out about the album as well. So, new song, United, lord.net.au/United. The new album is Fallen Idols, and you can go and check all that out over at lord.net.au/United. Oh, it feels good, man. So, in addition to hosting the Andy Social Podcast, playing bass in Lord, I also host a self-starter podcast. So a change of pace. If you know somebody, or maybe it's you, that is self-employed, might be a freelancer or own their own business, or maybe you're frustrated and you want to get out of your crappy job or work out a way to earn a bit of extra money on the side, then Self-Starter might be for you. So if you go to selfstarter.com.au, you can go and click on the blog. There's a heap of blog posts there. I've got a bit of a goal for the first half of this year to try and get more blog content up. So go over and check that out. There's also a fortnightly podcast where I basically do case studies of different people out there that are creating their own desirable lifestyle, as I coin that term. And you can go over, check that out. And it's on all of the usual podcast players out there: Apple, Google, Stitcher, blah, 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 Spotify, YouTube. Oh, no, not YouTube. But anyway, you catch a drift. But go to selfstarter.com.au. You can go and check all of that out. And please shoot me guest suggestions. If you think there's somebody out there that really fits well into the Self-Starter podcast format, I am looking to launch season 2 in June of this year, 2019. So I am recording in advance those episodes right now. So if you know somebody, if you've got any recommendations, please reach out to me. But go over to selfstarter.com.au and go and give it a crack. This week's shout-outs. Every week, every episode, I thank one person for supporting me, supporting the band, supporting the podcasts, and it can be in a range of different ways. It could be something as simple as a guest recommendation or a message of encouragement or a bit of social media love, the liking, the commenting, the tagging, the retweeting, all that sort of stuff. It goes a long way, as you would all know. It could also be things such as buying merchandise from the Bandcamp page over on my website. That's andysocial.net, by the way. Or it could be shouting me a beer via the PayPal button over on my website as well. It doesn't matter. Small, big, whatever. It keeps this whole thing moving. It keeps me inspired. It just ensures that what I do continues on. So thank you to everybody that continues to put in those 1% extras on top of listening to me waffle on, which is more than enough, really. But anybody that goes above and beyond, it just means a lot to me. So thank you, thank you, thank you. But each week I only thank one person, one at a time. We'll get there. We'll get through everyone eventually. But this week, I am thanking Holly Richards. Holly is from Albany in Western Australia. And Albany, for my international friends that are listening in, or people that just aren't really familiar with towns and cities in Australia, Albany is down the bottom of Western Australia, right down at the southern tip. I don't think it's like the most southern part, but it is right down south of Western Australia. So it's really not near anything in particular. And I haven't been to Albany. I've been to Bunbury. I think that's the closest I've been. We played a show there quite a few years ago. That was, it was good to play there at least once anyway. I won't get into that. But I haven't played Albany, haven't been there. But Holly's from Albany, and the reason why she's getting a shout out is that she gave me a beer shout via the PayPal button over at andysocial.net with a little message of encouragement there as well. So Holly, thank you so much. It means a hell of a lot to me. It's completely unnecessary, but I have it there for a reason. If anybody's ever feeling generous and wants to give me a couple of bucks or a couple of cents or whatever it might be, it all adds up and goes a long way. The podcast does cost money. I have hosting fees and I pay for gear and I get around town and travel, talking to people, getting merchandise printed and all that sort of stuff. So all this stuff does add up, and I have no hesitation in paying for it myself. But when people do give me a little bit extra, then it goes straight back into that. So it means a lot to me when people make that little bit of extra effort to support the podcast. So thank you so much, Holly. When you hear this, shoot me a message and I'm going to send you out a little care pack of something, some stuff, some goodies, some shit lying around the house. I'll make sure it's not literal shit, but I'll try and find something amusing to send out in the post to you. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And thank you once again to everyone that continues to support the podcast. This week's episode is with Brett Garsed. Oh, folks, I know I crap on quite a bit, and it's like these episodes are like children and you don't want to show favoritism. And I've said it in the past, this episode's one of the best ones I've ever done or one of the best conversations I've had, etc. And I don't not mean it, but this episode was one of the best conversations I've ever had. And I'm a big Brett Garsed fanboy. It was just really cool to sit down and have a chat with Brett. And for people that don't know, Brett is a legendary Australian guitarist. He has been the main guitarist in John Farnham's band for the past several decades. There's been a couple of other guys that have come in, some notable guys, but I want to give the spotlight for Brett this time, so we won't get into the detail. You can go and look up all that stuff. But Brett's been the main guitarist for the John Farnham's band for quite a number of years. He was there with John's iconic album, Whispering Jack, Age of Reason, and he's been with the band for the past, I don't even know, the past 20 years, I believe, or at least 15. Probably more. And he's just an amazing guitarist. He's also been the guitarist in the amazing late 80s, early 90s rock band Nelson from the US, who had massive hits such as Can't Live Without Your Love and Affection, After the Rain, which was the name of that album as well. And Brett toured on that album. He was part of that album, and just super cool and amazing guitarist. He's also done stuff with TJ Helmerich, I think. Probably butchered his name. He's done stuff with Derek of Planet X, who was Extreme Theatre. Heaps of stuff. This guy has done so much over the years. I'm going to dump everything, his resume, into the show notes over at andysocial.net. You can learn more about Brett by going to brettgarsed.com. I'm going to put a bunch of retro videos of him shredding and playing with all these iconic musicians and everything else we discussed. There were so many awesome people referenced in this episode, friends of mine, friends of Brett's. It was just a really fun chat. Now, I made the epic trip to Brett's home in rural Victoria. When I contacted Brett, I don't know what to expect. I actually had him on my list since day dot. When I first started this podcast in August of 2015, and I was writing a list of people that I'd love to chat to at some point down the track, Brett was on that list. And for whatever reason, a lot of, I guess, imposter syndrome and self-talk, negative self-talk, I should say, I just never bothered to reach out. And I reached out to Brett, I think in December, and he was keen. And he just replied back straight away, more or less. And so we made it happen. And so I flew down to Melbourne, got in a car, and went out to his home. And we sat down and had this epic, awesome chat. So I'm going to leave it at that. As always, everything's in the show notes over at andysocial.net. If you're listening to this through a podcast player, you should be able to click through or scroll up and see all the show notes. So there'll be a bunch of clickable links so you can follow Brett on all the social media channels, or also go to his website as well. Heaps of great content and an amazing guitarist. And as you will soon listen, an amazing guy as well. Just really, really fun chat, and just an absolute ball. It was an amazing moment. So thanks, Brett, and thank you to you all for tuning in. So enough waffling from me. Please enjoy this awesome chat with Brett Garsed. Thanks for inviting me here.
No worries,
I never thought I'd come to your place, and also coming to this part of the world. It's a scorcher of a day. But it's nice to be in the aircon.
Yeah, it's going to get worse though. Once that sun starts to get low, man, it's going to fry us in here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll keep an eye on the time as we go. But you were born out here, weren't you?
Yeah. I was actually born in Bendigo.
Yep.
And then my family moved to Geelong for a very short time. And when I was about 4 years old, my father was a returned serviceman,
yep.
So he was allocated a plot of land. Actually, yeah, they lived at Lockwood South for a while,
okay.
Which was just outside of Bendigo. Then we moved to Geelong. And when I was about 4, we moved back here to a place called Clydesdale.
Yep.
And that's where the family farm was. And then my father passed away when I was about 6, and which makes it 1969. And my brother, John, who was 16 at the time, took over the farm.
Mm.
And then eventually my mother and sister and I moved to another place just up the road, and he and his wife took over the farmhouse and all that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, this is where I went to school here. I did my apprenticeship here, and come full circle and come back.
Well, I was going to say, because I mean, you've been all over the place.
And yeah, I've been around a bit.
You've done the stint overseas in the US as well. And did you always have plans that, or in the back of your mind, that you would just always eventually get back here? Was it something where you just return, or it's just sort of a natural sequence of events that just found you back?
Oh, well, my mother only passed away last year. She was 98, I think.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and we wanted to come back here because I wanted my daughter to get to know her, and her to know my daughter, and all that stuff. So it was great. We had a good many years of that, so it was worth it coming back.
Yeah. Do you ever get those moments these days where you sort of, I mean, I know obviously there's a lot changed and there's a lot more infrastructure and things around, but do you sort of have those moments where it's a bit like the Twilight Zone, where it feels like you've never left?
Every time I drive past that big factory I used to work in,
yeah.
The weird thing is, where I went to school is now a IGA supermarket, so that's kind of strange. But the front of the school is still part of the supermarket, so it's really bizarre. Yeah, it's I have a lot of moments where I'm standing somewhere and I can vividly remember what it used to be like before it all changed. And yeah, it's quite strange. But it's kind of nice in a way, you know. And it's interesting, like I used to come back from America to visit quite often back in the 90s. And just up the road there was a little sign saying you are now entering Castlemaine, and there was a population number on there, and it was falling. Like,
oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, I was looking at it going, man, the poor old town's going to dry up and blow away, and it's gone the opposite direction. It's a really hip place to be now. I wish I'd known. I would have bought real estate back then. I'd be a millionaire.
I was going to say, I think real estate anywhere in this country is expensive for the most part. It's just gone through the roof. But yeah, it's interesting. Like when I was sort of having a bit of a look at Sticky Beak online, and I was just seeing sort of the origins and where you've been over the years. And I think, I don't know, it's sort of those, like we were talking about biographies before, and you see these people that just want to get out. They want to get out of their home, you know, or they're part of town or whatever, and just want to make something of themselves. And a lot of them sort of move on to the big cities, and they just never look back. And it was kind of cool to see, oh, like you've sort of come that full circle back here, and it's something that you've obviously wanted to do. And I guess having family here probably makes that a big incentive. Yeah, well, I suppose a common denominator in those stories of people that want to get out, like a lot of times their family lives aren't particularly pleasant. You know, there's conflict, and whereas my family were fantastic. They always have been. You know, I grew up in a really incredible environment, and where they just, you know, they were just a loving, caring family. We all really got along well, and they were very supportive of whatever I wanted to have a crack at. And to be fair too, like, I mean, I wasn't the sort of guy who was like, well, that's it, I'm just going to try and be a rock and roller or something. Like I left school at about 15 and got a plumbing apprenticeship, because that's what all of us did back then. All my friends went and got apprenticeships. That's how you rolled back then. And bearing in mind too, back then you could get a job in a small town like this. Like, I don't know what it must be like for young people now. I guess the option you maybe you have to move away. It's got to be rough, you know. Whereas back then we take it for granted, like you just left school and you got a job, and that's it. It's just a straight path of what
exactly.
You do.
You know, like I guess how times have changed. Like people talk about young people, how they're lazy or something and they don't want to work. It's like, man, things were different back then. You could get a job. Like it's not like that now. It's challenging, you know, and especially if you're posed with the problem of having to move somewhere where what little wage you might get is going to be soaked up in rent and everything else. I mean, that's it. You know, then you're just on a hamster on a wheel. You know? It's tough. It's definitely different. I mean, I think it's like anything. It's you got to be flexible in mind and see where things change, and not always the old model continues to work. So that's right.
You got to keep being flexible, and there's certainly opportunity out there, but I think there's more of an emphasis put on people to sort of take their own initiative now, and so that. Very much buzz terms, but that entrepreneur sort of stuff is really big over the last couple of years, where people are sort of creating their own businesses and doing all that sort of stuff. And well, everything exists to do it, doesn't it? Yeah. It's like I often think, like, your laptop is your record company, and your social media is your PR person. Like before all that happened, before the digital revolution happened and the internet, then you needed a record company. If you wanted to make any real product of quality to get to people, you needed that kind of backing, because it was such a ridiculously expensive machine to get involved in. And you had to be part of that machine to really, like, it was very few people that broke through that. I was going to say, there would have been just a limited number of gatekeepers. Yeah. And you would have had to get past them in order to have any form of recognition, let alone success. That's right. Oh, yeah, to have a piece of vinyl in your hands that sounded of quality. Yeah. Yeah, that was, there were some big dollars thrown down to get to that stage, you know, Whereas, the stuff that people are capable of doing now within the confines of a bedroom, unbelievable, you know? Yeah, definitely. So. It's sort of on that topic, because I guess going back to what you said before about, you know, it was just the expected thing that you go and get your apprenticeship and you take that path like most other people would. But, you know, you playing guitar and sort of, I know it was probably more in the later 80s when you had sort of a lot more of the solo guitarists and the shred sort of era, where, you know, Shrapnel Records and Cacophony and all that sort of stuff. But did you sort of see the possibilities of what you could be as a guitarist when you, like, not when you just first picked up a guitar, but as you were playing a little bit further down the track, that you sort of thought there is something there is an opportunity for you? Or was it more that you just sort of fell into opportunities just from playing? To be honest, I set the bar so low. Like working here, I just thought, look,
if I could get to Melbourne
Yep.
and get in a working cover band and just pay whatever it costs to live by doing gigs with a guitar in my hand, I'd be happy. You know, that was as much as I expected to happen. That was pretty much where I was at. And the only reason other things were presented was because I used to buy Guitar Player magazine all the time, and I noticed they started doing the Spotlight column. Mike Varney was doing that. And yeah, this was the era when guitars and rock guitar and rock in general was just reaching its absolute peak.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I just was reading this Spotlight column, and I thought, well, I've never seen an Australian in here. What have I got to lose? So I had my girlfriend take a picture of me and send it off to Mike. And I didn't even know I was in the magazine until I got this letter from some guy in Amsterdam, and I was like, what the hell is this? And yeah, that's when I thought, I must be in the magazine. And I rang up. I used to buy a lot of gear from a shop in Frankston called Guitar Village, and Derek, the guy that worked there, I rang him up to talk about buying a guitar or something, and he said, hey, I just got back from the States and you're in Guitar Player. So, because, see, back then it took 3 months for the, it took July for the March issue to get here. So,
Well, I remember that even in the 90s, like, even you still had that issue, like a big thing, and I've crapped on about this on the podcast so much, so sorry, everyone. But I was a big basketball fan. I loved the American basketball in the 90s, and it was just big in Australia. That just caught on, and the NBL sort of caught on with all of that. But we used to get all the imported magazines even then, and you had to wait a couple of months for that issue, but because there was no internet at that stage, or very little, and so by the time you got this info, you're like, oh, this is fantastic. There's all these things are happening, blah, blah, blah. And then everybody else is like, well, that was in the past. That was like 2-3 months ago. So it was the same sort of deal.
Oh, absolutely. Look, everything's so instant now. Like I just finished watching the Springsteen on Broadway thing on Netflix. And he had this great story where him and his friends were sort of doing a road train getting from New Jersey to LA, because that's where they were going to start having a crack at the big time. So it was about 3 separate vehicles, and they all got lost. They'd separated. And he said, let me just explain. When you don't have cell phones, they are gone. They're out of your life. They've vanished. And like, I talked to people that used to be trade reps and things in cars. And and they'd have to pull up, and they'd have to find a payphone and get on a payphone, make all their calls, and get back in the car and keep driving. And we just take it for granted now. You can just have a video call with somebody while you're driving down the road. I can have a video call with my friend in Los Angeles. It's ridiculous. So
I walked past someone yesterday or the day before, and they walked over to a payphone and started putting coins in. And I had to stop myself and, like, without making it really obvious, and just look and go, are you okay? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, this is really odd. And then I sort of had those experiences where you'd have your push bike and off you go, and your parents would just say, well, as long as you're back before it's dark, and you'd probably have a bit of spare change in your pocket just in case. Or you learn how to do what they would call the barrel roll, where you could dial the number and you would get half a second where it would connect. And so your mum would be on the other end and go, hi, and then you'd call again, it's Andrew. And then you just keep going. Fantastic. So you didn't have to spend the 20 cents or whatever it was. But it's funny now, because it's just, it's expected that everybody knows where you are all the time. Yeah,
well, everyone does, really. Yeah. I mean, you are always contactable now, which is a beautiful thing. But yeah, what I did was so old school anyway. Like, I mean, I made these little 4-track demos. I got one of a Fostex X15, wasn't it? X something?
Yeah, right.
Whatever it was, like, it was a 4-track cassette player. And back then, this was the pinnacle of home recording. I think it might have even been before Tascams came out. And I think by the time you overdubbed a few tracks or bounced them, the hiss was louder than what you were recording. It was brilliant. But that's what I did my little demos on. And the stuff I sent to Mike Varney was demos that my band did. And I just, without even realising it, I thought, he doesn't want to hear the cover tunes, he just wants the solos. So I just edited all the solos together, and probably was less than a minute of music, which is probably a very smart thing to do. We didn't have to wade through these lame cover tunes to get to a solo. So and then I did a whole bunch of little demos bought a drum kit off my friend. They're horrible. I mean, if you listen back to them, they're hysterically bad, but
kind of
they were they were the things I sent out. Once I got the Spotlight column thing, I photocopied it and handwritten letters, and duped cassettes and stuck them in bags and mailed them to people. I must have sent out a good, at least 15 of them.
And it's different now because if you send an email to somebody, you don't always expect a response, but you sort of want to see the red message, or you want to see something that just acknowledges that it got there.
Yeah.
But you're posting stuff out. You don't know. You don't know what happened, and you don't know how long it's going to take either.
And of course, the same rules that probably still apply were in play back then. Where if it's unsolicited material, they can't accept it, because if they do, and next thing you know, someone puts out a song, and by complete coincidence, it resembles your song, and then there's a lawsuit and all that sort of stuff. But it was just lucky. One of them, I was just finding random addresses, and I just found the Wheatley organisation, and I thought, oh, well,
Why not?
why not? Yeah, why indeed? Why not? And it was just ironic, because I don't know if ironic's the right word, but just strange that my petrol-head friends and I used to make the big trip to Bathurst to go and see the car races. It was just an excuse to drink heavily, really. It was, and the very first time we went, they built this sort of amphitheatre concert thing there, and the very first band to play there was Little River Band.
Right, wow.
And if you bought a ticket to the race, you could go to the gig for free. And I thought, well, great. So we walked all the way up the mountain from the pits where we were staying and watched this gig. And I was really keen to see them, because I was a big fan of the band at that time. That was when John had joined the band, and they did the Net album. I really loved that album. And I remember thinking, like, man, I wonder if this guy can sing like this live. Because, I loved rock and metal and everything. And I used to get very disappointed when you go and see the heavy rock bands and the singers panting for breath, and they'd hit these incredible notes on albums, and they couldn't even get near it live, and holding the microphone out to people. And I remember standing there watching it going, this guy, he's holding back in the studio. He obliterated live what he did in the studio.
Yeah.
I'd never heard anything like it. And of course they ended up closing that venue because Chisel played there in the next 6 months. They had the bike races up there, and Chisel played there, and it was such a riot they just shut it.
That's it. Get rid of it.
It was insane. Even the gig I was at was nuts. I mean, they were, all the yobbos up on the mountain were just throwing stubbies, and they were trying to hit the people at the show, and it's crazy.
I don't think it was too long ago where they started putting the alcohol limit on when you bring your cars in. I've never been, but you bring your cars into the campsite, and they were checking your cars to make sure, like, 2 cases per car or 3 cases or whatever it was, because it was just that out of control. But I think that was only within the last 5 or 10 years that they started doing that. So,
well, hell, I could
only imagine what it would have been like.
We would have gone there back in, I don't know when it was, like early 80s, I guess, 83 or something like that. And we just had an esky full of cans in the back seat. I sat in the back with the esky, and I'm pretty sure we would have been over the limit. So, I was decadent. Yeah.
Different time.
Different times.
Different time. I'm going to jump all around the place, but sort of obviously sending that out off to Wheatley got an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that opportunity is still going even now after all these years. And I'll touch on that a little bit, but one thing that I'm really curious about is, given this guy who's grown up in rural Victoria, very sort of homegrown, sort of stereotypical Aussie sort of way of life, and you've got the family and everything's great, and I know there's a lot in between, but you get the gig to play with Nelson. Now, if you're looking on the surface at Nelson, and you look at that After the Rain album, and you look at the Nelson brothers with their hair and your hair, and everybody in the way that they're all glammed up, and great tunes, but very sort of commercially friendly arena rock sort of stuff. Was that a massive adjustment for you?
Oh, yeah, massive.
Culturally, just to sort of...
In every way, shape and form, yeah. It wasn't personally. They were just great guys. We're all still friends to this day. Like, just it was one of the most harmonious bands I've ever been in, like, as far as just personalities. We got along great. And thank God, it was a really great, fun experience in that regard. And to be honest, the shock was to just be thrown into the American system, where bands in Australia were organic. Like Chisel were a great example, where, Mossy and Jimmy had the long hair and looked like the rock gods, and then Don and Steve and Phil they sort of looked like ordinary guys to a degree, just they could have been accountants or people walking up the street. And a lot of these Australian bands were like that. There was no discernible image. They just kind of were what they were, and they got up and just kicked ass, and Whereas in America, it was all about image. Like, oh no, you've got to grow your hair longer. We can't have this guy here. This guy's too fat. This guy's too thin. This guy's too tall. You know, it's like everyone had to look like they came from the same parents. You know, it was just weird. I was just looking at it going, what the bloody hell's going on here? You know. And then I thought, oh, well, in for a penny, in for a pound, you know, like I guess I'm here now and this is happening. So I just remember Gunnar Nelson said to me one day, I think it was a rhetorical question. I don't think he really honestly cared what my answer was, but he said, so what do you think our image should be? And I said, well, no image, jeans and T-shirts, mate, nothing. And he never asked that question again. And but here's the funny thing. You're asking. Here's the funny thing. Their A&R guy, I'll never forget this. Their A&R guy was a guy named John Kolodner, who was the most interesting character I've ever met in my entire life. If you want to know what he looks like, go and watch. I think it's the Aerosmith video for "Dude Looks Like a Lady," and I think he's dressed up like he used to dress like John Lennon with the white suit.
Oh yeah. And
he looked like him, and he actually signed John Lennon to Geffen for the Double Fantasy album just before he got assassinated. And I remember him coming into the studio, and I was working on solos, and he'd sit there, and he had this really nasally voice. He'd sit there, and they'd stop the tape, and he'd go, oh, if I have one more fucking guitar solo, I'll stop this fucking record. I'm sitting there going, oh, brilliant, thanks, you know, good talk. But the thing he said that really blew me away was, he said, I want this band to be the Eagles of the 90s.
Wow.
That's what he wanted.
What a call.
And when I look back at that, I thought, this is before modern country had happened. This is like 5 years before that whole scene happened. And I remember doing a session with a guy in about 93, 94, long after the whole LA rock thing, or whatever you want to call it, the hair rock thing. That was gone. Grunge was in. That was killing everything. That was the thing. And I remember talking to this producer I was working with, and I said, so where do you think all these guys that were in these hair bands are going to go? And he said, Nashville. He said, you wait. He said, you'll start seeing country bands wearing leather pants and with screaming guitar solos. And he said, it'll just morph into country rock. So really, if Nelson had listened to this guy and gone down that road, they would have been at the forefront of a new scene as opposed to on the tail end of a dying scene. And the funny thing was that their father, Rick Nelson, was credited with starting the LA sound, the sort of country sound that became the Eagles and
definitely
Poco and all that sort of stuff. So
it's I mean, I'm just thinking of all those stereotypical sort of hair glam metal bands and glam rock bands from the 80s, and a number of them sort of, and probably missed the bus, but a number of them sort of tried to jump onto that Nashville country scene sort of later into the picture, sort of late 90s.
Well, some of them even tried to jump on the grunge thing too. They tried to jump onto anything.
And then in the early 2000s, it went to sort of almost like a goth rock sort of thing. So you had like bands like Faster Pussycat and Tough, I think maybe. There was a couple of other ones. And they went into sort of really sort of dyed black hair.
The Hollywood vampire kind of thing.
That kind of stuff. And so it was very much just try and grasp whatever's going and try and find a new train to jump on. But I mean, Nelson, like even on that album, and I think I haven't heard all the stuff that came after it, but I think I've got, is it Imaginator that came after that? Because you only did After the Rain, I think.
I played on a little bit on a lot of the tracks for Imaginator. Like that was supposed to be.
That was several years later.
Look, you know, if they just gone back in the studio, quick smart, we could have knocked out another album and maybe got another tour out of it and had a bit more fun, you know. But instead, it sort of turned into this huge sort of concept thing, and by then the band was over. You know, we're all just looking for other things to do. And the funny thing for me was I just assumed, like, as soon as Nirvana took off and the grunge scene came in, I thought, oh, well, that's the end of that then, you know. And I'd sort of started doing albums with TJ Helmerich, which made no money, but I was having a great time. But it never occurred to me that there was still a very functioning network of bands out there that I probably could have gone and auditioned for. Like, you know, a lot of bands. Living in LA, and I suppose New York could be the same too. Like, I remember TJ, he was from Chicago. The Midwest, and he said you got to understand whatever's happening on either coast is not what's happening out in the middle of America. And I just assumed that because I was seeing what was hip at the moment, that was a blanket coverage of what was happening in America. But all the bands that had sort of gone down a notch in the public eye were still working their asses off. They're all out touring and looking for musicians. I could have auditioned for any number of bands and probably kept working, but
it's one of those. I mean, I think country is one of those weird genres where it's almost like its own beast.
Well, it is,
and
yeah.
it's almost got cult status where it doesn't get a lot of major mainstream press, but in their world, it's huge.
Sure,
and even in Australia,
as big as anything.
The country scene here in Australia, you wouldn't know.
Well, I mean, I remember seeing I think Billboard used to put out the top earners chart. You know, John made it the year we did the last time tour. He was in there. And normally it's, you know, if the Stones tour, they top it, that sort of thing, mega bands. But yeah, I think one year it was Tim McGraw and Faith Hill.
Yeah.
Just, you know, they went out and killed it. You know, I mean, don't underestimate the country market, man.
No.
It's huge. It's huge in America. I mean, God, you're talking about a country with 350 million people.
Yeah, I think we kind of forget that when we're here. We sort of look around, can't see too many people around the area.
There's more people in LA County than there are in Australia. Like, I mean, there's over 30 million people just in LA County. It's so densely populated, and that opens up, like in America, you know, you drive for 2 hours and you end up in yet another city with over 1 million people.
Yeah.
Here in Australia, you drive 2 hours and you end up in the middle of nowhere.
You know? That's right. So. And I guess it would have been a very overwhelming time anyway, because I think being in LA anyway, I think just at LA, no matter what era you're in, as far as the last several decades, but I think around then, there just would have been so much happening around that time, and sort of that transition where, rock and metal was really big, and then grunge starting to kick in and sort of infiltrate sort of mainstream press. But there would have been so much distraction around that time that you wouldn't have been able to see past it.
Well, the other interesting thing was too, because I was there for 13 years, so I saw a lot. And by the mid-90s, everyone's going, so what's going to be the next big thing in rock? What's it going to be? And it's like, the answer was, it ain't rock. It's hip-hop. It's R&B, you know, it's rap. It was interesting to see that transition too, where it was like, you know, the last gasp, I guess, was new metal, you know, like the whole Korn and all that sort of stuff. And everyone's wondering, like, industrial and all this sort of stuff, and Nine Inch Nails and everything. And nope, it's a whole other thing. You know, when I first got to America in '89, I was really enthralled to be able to watch MTV as a channel, because here we had it for an hour on weekends or something, you know. And I remember they had a show called Yo MTV Raps, and it was a half hour that they'd repeat twice a day. And it was amazing to see rap and hip hop go from being a half hour that was repeated half a day to dominating the entire network. So yeah, it was fascinating. It was interesting to just sort of sit there as someone I would consider myself to be an outside observer, and just go, wow, this is interesting to watch everyone scrambling around trying to find their place in all this. And
what was there an opportunity that took you to the States in the first place, or was it sort of this sort of dream where you thought, let's go and give it a shot?
Look, I still wonder what was going through my head, you know, to be honest. Jeff Shoecraft was managing the co-managing the Nelson guys at the time, and Jeff he used to work for the Little River Band, and so he knew John and he knew me through working with John, and Matt and Gunnar had been here to Australia and they just loved it, and they were really keen on finding an Australian to put in their band, and Jeff just said, you know, like, you want to fly over and audition for it. And at the time, John was having a pretty big break. We'd been touring pretty hard. And I'm still just trying to wrap my head around why I did it, to be honest. Like, I mean, why would I leave John's band? I still can't quite figure it out. But
that would have been, so if it was 89 or around that time, that would have been after, from sort of a John Farnham point of view, after Age of Reason?
Age of Reason, and we'd done the big classical, the orchestral tour.
Yep.
And I think John needed a bit of a break, you know, like he'd been, not only just from a public exposure perspective, but just to sort of regroup and figure out what he was going to do. So I think that's why I thought, I won't have anything to do. I don't know. I'd sort of settled in Melbourne and tried to sort of get involved in the session scene. And, you know, you don't just walk into a scene, you've got to earn your stripes. And so... every time I think back about it, none of it makes any sense to me. But
it all just kind of happened.
Yeah, it just happened, and I guess I just went, okay, so this is happening, you know, and now I'm on a plane, and it was very strange.
Was it your first time overseas as well?
Not my first time overseas. We toured Europe twice with John.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say some Germany stuff.
My first time of actually experiencing America. And but look, you know what? At the end of all this, I was just talking to someone about this the other day. Like, you sort of think that being involved in this industry, and it's all about, we did this mega gig and played for this mega band and had this mega hit and blah, blah, blah. But it really is just about the people you meet. Like the whole American experience to me, it's got nothing to do with any kind of success. I'm still friends with people that I'm so glad I got to meet. You know what I mean? They're still a part of my life to this day. And I'm just so grateful for that. That's what I'm grateful for. And look, I tell you what, after the whole Nelson thing caved, and I stayed there and slogged it out, like I suffered, man. I was making less money than your average illegal alien gardener, you know. And it was because I got off on this sort of fusion trip with TJ, and it was where I learned. Well, I don't think I really needed it, but I got it, whether I needed it or not. I got a perspective and a humility, and to learn to appreciate when things are great. And I'm so grateful John allowed me to come back and work for him. He would have had every right to say, well, yeah, you know, have fun with your new career, but God bless him, he asked me to come back, and
because it would have got to that.
I never took it for granted, but I certainly never would now. God.
Well, it would have got to that point after John was sort of getting back into the swing of things, and you're not there. Was there sort of a conversation, or was it sort of just an agreement without words of, well, you're off doing your thing, and so we're just going to keep going for a while? And
oh man, I don't know. Like I said, you know, and I still turn down other tours. Like stupidity is an incredibly powerful thing, you know, naivety and all the rest of it. Like, I don't know. It's just, I look back, I was making some incredibly poor decisions back then, and not based on common sense at all. I think I was just hoping for the best and not thinking about what the right thing to do was, you know. And maybe, I don't know, maybe after a while you get so used to banging your head against a wall, it's all you know. I don't know, but yeah, all I know is that when I eventually moved back here to Australia, and I think it was in 2003 when I eventually settled back here in Australia, I realised that like when I was living in America, I thought, I think I'm manic depressive. I think I'm all these things. I think I need medication, you know. It's like, no, I needed a gig. I needed to work. I needed
such an American thing to say, like, I need meds.
I needed to be a human that had a purpose in life. And and as soon as I came back to Australia and just resettled here, everything fell into place, and I just thought, now I'm sensible again, you know. So.
Did you notice when you came back that the pace hadn't changed from when you left, or had it changed quite a bit? I mean, obviously you would have come back and forth over the years, but sort of settling back into life here, had you noticed change, or was it like
no, it wasn't. It was beautiful, actually. It was sort of like, well, like I could move around Melbourne, and it was like it was very similar to Los Angeles, but just smaller and gentler, you know. LA was a great place to go, though. If you're going to be dumped in America in a big city, LA's a good one because it's so spread out. You can find pockets of it where it's just like home. New York's a whole other kettle of fish, whole other lifestyle, you know, vertical living and all the rest of it. Whereas, I found LA to be very, very easy to find, like a spot where, this isn't that much different to where I was, you know. And
whereabouts in LA did you live? Did you live in a few different places?
Yeah, a few different places. North Hollywood for a long time. Managed to avoid all the gunshots. Like, I was just used to it. We'd walk out of our apartment. Our apartment was only a small place, like a double-story joint with about a dozen apartments in it. And now our door just opened right onto the footpath, and I'd walk out and go, so it's cop cars on every corner and choppers, and you just got used to it after a while, you know. They're obviously after somebody who's leaping fences, you know, and running for it. So.
Quick, run back inside and watch it on TV.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, I remember being so upset because we were stuck in traffic trying to get home. Oh. And I was like, oh man, this sucks. I'm going to miss Star Trek, you know. And we finally get home, and I'm like, what the hell's going on out there? Why is the traffic so bad? And it's OJ in the Bronco. He's it's bizarre. It's sort of funny that both the big riot I missed. Because I was out doing drum clinic gigs with Bobby Rock. We were in Houston, Texas when all that erupted.
Wow.
And the big earthquake in '94, I was here in Australia working with John.
Oh, right.
So I turned on the news and saw freeway overpasses in half, you know. So I sort of missed a lot of those things, but yeah, it's a hell of a place to be.
Oh, I tell you what, that's so many movie ideas, or movies have just come out of that that
Yeah.
place. Yeah, it's such a unique part of the world. You seem like a pretty humble guy, and we've only sort of met today, but you've worked with all these incredible musicians over the years.
Yeah, that's what's made me humble.
Well, the question,
I know how good is, you know.
well, I was going to say, and TJ was one of these guitarists, and I didn't know a lot about him, but I knew of him, and I knew a few like songs here and there, but I went down a bit of a rabbit hole, and I was watching a lot of live stuff with you on stage as well, and I just thought, regardless of how good you are, that's a person that potentially could be extremely intimidating.
Sure, yeah.
And for you, given everything in the past and sort of the sequence of events with all the people that you've worked with, have you had to sort of overcome your own sort of self-doubt, or any sort of limiting beliefs in yourself?
Who said I ever overcame it?
Well, is it still a challenge now?
It's just something I've learned to live with, yeah. No, self-doubt's kind of ingrained into the Garsed psyche. It's just a part of who we are, you know, but you know, it's a, I think what it is just always wanting to live up to the opportunity, you know. I get the opportunity to work with well, you know, every time I stand on stage with John, in my opinion, I'm on stage with the greatest singer that's ever lived, one of the greatest entertainers that's ever walked a stage.
Yep.
So what I want to do is live up to that opportunity. And if I get to work with a guy like TJ or Virgil Donati or Rick Fiorabracci or whoever I'm playing with, you know, there's these monster musicians, and I want to live up to that opportunity, and I just never do. So, and probably never will. But at the same time, I don't want to be a misery guts about it. You know, like no one wants to hear someone. You know, I've had the opportunity. Like at least revel in that and be happy about it. So,
it's just I think for me, I always find things in the past where you're at a crossroad and there's an opportunity or a decision that you're going to make, and there's that self-talk where that imposter syndrome, not good enough, or you know, why would you of all people be worthy to take on this opportunity, or there's a million other people out there that is far better than you, and I think in comparison, some of the stuff that those crossroad moments for me have been very small scale, but it's all in the context of your own sort of journey. And I just think, you know, going to the US, you know, getting that call, whatever that was like with Wheatley, and the things that you've done over the years of just finding yourself in these moments where you've potentially thought, do I do this? Have you had those moments where you sort of...
Well, yeah, huge moments. Well, I mean, yeah, I suppose... I remember when I first worked with John, because this was before Whispering Jack. This was 85, Christmas of 85. And when I went down and met with well, first I talked to Glenn on the phone, and then I went down and met with John and Ross Fraser at John's house and played on a demo of what would be Let Me Out, the song Let Me Out.
Best song.
And then the next contact was might have been with Glenn, just saying, well, yeah, we'll do some gigs. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is a lot to take on, you know. I hope I'm not the only guitar player in the band. And luckily Sam C was in the band as well.
Yep.
And I think, thank God for that. I've got a pro, you know, like Sam was there to prop everything up and be the rock solid, experienced professional guitar player. God knows what poor Sam, we're dear friends to this day, but God knows what he thought back then, this nut job on the other side of the stage playing as fast as he can all the time. And Sam's the most beautiful, tasteful player. Like, and the sad thing was, like, even back then, like, I desperately wanted to ask Sam questions, like, about music, about playing, but I didn't. I was too nervous to do it, because I thought, what if he turns around and says, well, if you're asking me this, what are you doing here? Yeah, exactly, yeah. But the stupid thing is, he probably would have been delighted to give me some insight and some help, you know. So that was the main trouble with growing up in this area, because I looked, but there just were no... It wasn't like there was that great guitar player up the road that everybody went to see to find out about chords and harmony and how to do this and that and the other. We're all just flying blind, and we all knew about as much as each other, which wasn't much. And that's kind of how it was, you know. I knew how to do what I did, but there were so many gaps, and there still are, you know. But yeah, there was that's part and parcel with this industry, and I'm sure individuals, bands have to make those hard decisions. And a lot of it at the end of the day may be just a leap of faith. It's like, okay, well, you come to a fork in the road, and
what's the worst that could happen?
We have no idea which way either of these roads goes. The only way we'll find out is to take one of them, you know, and there it is.
Did you, using that sort of story of not having anybody in the area that you could sort of look up to or learn from, was it not until you moved to Melbourne that you started to see other players around that you, like, did you see an accelerated, like your own skills accelerate when you were in Melbourne, where there was more opportunity, more players out there? Your own ability got a lot better quicker?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we'll definitely see, working with John's band, they would just lift you up, you know. They would just elevate you, you know. You couldn't help but get better groove and all the rest of it, because you're playing with people with great groove. Like, it was just already there. All you had to do was just tag along, and you would be swept up in that. Like, it was... the only trouble is I just never got a chance to really sit down and talk to people, you know. Like I've spent the past, 25 years in the band with Stuart Fraser. And I thought, God, I wish I'd known Stuart when you know, back then. I wish we'd been in the band together, like, because I talked to him about it, and I said, when you would, because I remember reading about Stuart in Duke magazine back when I was 14, and he was in Feather, and he was 16.
Yeah,
he's only 2 years older than me, and I remember that was when Swanee was the lead singer of the band, and they had a single out called Girl Trouble. I remember I saw it on Countdown, and he took this ripping solo in it, and I went, oh my God, this guy's 16. And he's just light years better than me. I thought, what am I going to... Luckily, not all 16-year-olds were that good, you know. But I remember I did ask him that. I said, back then, were you generally in bands with players that were more experienced than you? And he said, oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, and so they would guide him and kick his butt when he wasn't doing the right thing or whatever, you know. He always had someone around to get asked about almost anything and use it as a reference point. And whereas here... Yeah, we just had no contact with anyone like that. It wasn't like there was that great rock guitarist or jazz guitarist or country guitarist in town, because if they were there, I would have been knocking on their door every day.
and didn't have the internet, didn't have the connectivity, and anything that you were getting. Magazines, as we said before, were months dated, and you're only sort of reading stuff as well, so
you might see a small snippet of something on... I remember the first time Van Halen were on Countdown. So I'm sitting there watching Countdown, disco, and then and I'm like, what's this? And Eddie does that solo.
Yep.
And I had to wait a whole week till they replayed it on the Saturday.
Just so you
I'm
could hear it
sitting there with my cassette player ready to record it, just to see what the hell is going on.
Wow.
And by this time I've gone into town and I've ordered the album, and I've caught this just glimpse of what's he doing with his right hand. Looks like he's poking at the guitar or something. So the album comes home and I'm pulling it apart, and eventually it just dawns on me. He's touching the strings with his right hand, and the whole world explodes, you know. But that's what it was like. Like, now you go on there and they'll have tab for you. You can see it in 15 different camera angles. I mean, there's no mystery anymore. Not at all.
No.
Which is great.
Yeah.
But I was actually thinking about this the other day, because one of the main criticism from a lot of old guys is that the young guys all sound the same. I thought, well, that is kind of true. Like, I mean, you do listen to a lot of phenomenal players with incredible facility, but the character's not there.
Yep.
And I thought, but that makes sense, because... we're in the information age now. See, back when guys like me or the generation before me or whatever, even the generation after me, I mean, you may have to survive for the first 2 years of your playing life with nothing but the pentatonic scale.
Yeah,
I mean, that's all the information you've got. Information,
so you get creative with what...
that's right. Yeah. You've got to milk that for everything you can. So you dive into the expressive side. Your personality comes out in how you use that.
Yeah.
Whereas now, information is everywhere. So for those first 2 years, I mean, you can learn so many things. You're just absorbing stuff.
Yeah.
Absorbing it. So the personality may come later. I think a lot of these young players that are, like, after 5 years of playing, they're pros. They're ready to do anything. But their personality hasn't had a chance to surface yet. So
sort of the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just been flipped around. That's all it is. It's not like it's a lot of older guys... like me, like my age, I'm an old dude. And they like to sort of use that as their gripe, like, oh, they haven't got any personality. It's like, well, you got to give them time, man. If their personality hasn't surfaced, it's because they play everything brilliantly. I mean,
well, I've seen. I don't know. It always comes down to what you pay attention to. If you're not paying attention to something, then you sort of feel that it doesn't exist. But I've kind of seen in the last few years that instrumental rock guitar, the sort of world and genre of music, has started to come back a little bit more again. Like,
and be reinvented.
Yeah, and like I'm struggling to fit into this T-shirt, but I'm wearing an Ivani T-shirt. And,
right. I've heard.
And he's from Sydney, and he's got that. And I'll butcher it, but he's got that very sort of fusion type of sort of playing, and something you're well familiar with. And he's, with the power of the internet, he's not through a label, he's all self-released, and he's done some amazing stuff. I think he plays, is it Sir guitars? I think he's endorsed, I might be pronouncing that wrong, but I've certainly noticed that there seems to be a little bit more focus on it, a little bit more appreciation for it, and I think people are starting to...
And Pliny as well. He's an Aussie too, isn't he?
Who's that? Sorry.
Pliny.
Yep, he's from Sydney as well.
Yeah, how's that? And like I said, it's reinvented. Like, it's not like it's just like a rehash of what was. It's something else now. It's really changing. It's fantastic. Like, it's always good. Everything's always going to be there. That's right. Nothing just dies and goes away. It's just
things go in cycles.
Yeah, and things have their moment where they are the flavour of the month, if you like. You know, like I said, even shred guitar got it. Where it was in Pepsi commercial. Vinnie Moore did a Pepsi commercial, and Michael J. Fox, when he did Back to the Future, it was all about rock guitar, and GIT and Musicians Institute was born out of the rock guitar explosion in the 80s. That's what built that school. The interesting thing was, when was this? About 94, I think, when TJ was put in charge of the recording class there.
Okay.
Because he learned how to engineer by working at Cherokee Studios, where we did the Nelson album, which is how we met. And it was fascinating. When he first started that, they had like a dozen students and a full-blown studio with a live room and an SSL, and so, of course, we just went, let's just do an album, shall we? So we were pretty much just teaching them how to record by recording us.
Yeah.
And over the next few years, over the next decade, that whole program exploded. It eclipsed the guitar department and everything else. Why? Because it was driven by hip-hop, rap and hip-hop. All those people wanted to learn how to record at home by themselves, for themselves, It was just by a miracle. They almost saw it coming, like the computer age, like the ADATs into the computers and home recording. So where do you go? Let's go to recording school.
Right place, right time.
That's right, yeah. And I don't know if it was foresight or just damn good luck. They just lucked it.
I love that stuff.
Exactly.
It's especially when it's... Well, I like both sort of paths. Like I like the people that had the foresight and can see something on the horizon, able to prepare for it. Yeah. But I love when people just stumble into it and just out of the love of doing whatever they're doing and just right place, right time, it just clicks.
Well, when I was a child, because my father was a returned serviceman, and because he passed away, the Legacy Foundation, a person from the Legacy Foundation would come and visit me and my mother and just make sure we were cool and everything was okay. I remember the guy from Legacy, really nice chap, and he was talking about, so you consider this is like, early 70s to mid 70s, I was just a kid. And he was talking about possible future things that I could get involved in as a career. And he said, what about pneumatics, because hydraulics and things like that, because he was thinking assembly lines, they're all machine driven.
Wow.
But what he would never be able to see coming was that the computers would run those machines. So... imagine someone sitting there, it'd be like Steve Jobs sitting there saying, a computer in every house. And why would I have one of these things in my house?
One of these things that costs $25,000.
As big as a room.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, who would see that coming?
Absolutely. And even now, things are changing so quickly that there's, the blink of an eye, everything gets turned upside down. So it's sort of like you look around to see, well, what is coming?
Right.
And can you jump on something, or do you just sort of buckle down and just roll with it and see what's gonna come by?
I'll never jump on it. I'm still trying to figure out scales. Have fun with your apps. I'm still.
Well, just going back to guitar, and you mentioned it, and my eyes lit up because I forgot all about it. And Ty, who used to drum in our band, also edits this podcast. He's going to listen to it later. But he mentioned, when I mentioned I was going to come down and have a chat to you, he said, you've got to ask him about the Let Me Out solo. He said, best solo, and for me, best song from a Farnsy catalogue point of view, especially sort of that era from Whispering Jack onwards.
Right.
There's nothing else sort of in, I guess, Farnsy's catalogue that's anything like that song.
Yeah, well,
and he solo as well.
He wrote it.
Yeah.
He's so self-deprecating. He's like, I hate that song, you know.
Oh.
Typical John. He just doesn't want to go there. But
that solo, was that something that for you was sort of, I guess, it's sort of like fast forward several years where you're sort of doing stuff with TJ and everything like that, because the solo is just out of control. But it just seems so different to what was John Farnham. It seemed very...
Well, you know, the funny thing was that very first tour I did with Sam in the band, and it was a whole other band. You know, John was still a member of Little River Band, and we were playing Black Knight, Legs by ZZ Top. Like it was great. It was a full on rock gig.
Yeah.
And his fans were like what they called the Blue Rinse set. Like we go, not in Melbourne, we were just doing wild pub gigs here, but we go up to Twin Towns, up to Coolangatta. And it was just, the curtain came back and I was just in shock, because the first gig we did was at the Palace, you know, the joint that burned down in Melbourne, and the curtain came back there and it was just way overpacked. The fire marshals would have had a field day, and just sweaty, loud, out of control. It was great fun. And I'm waiting for that up in Twin Towns, and it comes back and it's just mums and dads. And the dads have, as John says, they've been dragged along, you know.
Oh, try and get some energy going in that room.
Yeah, the dads are like, 4 vodkas, thanks, you know. And the mums are just waiting for John to sing Raindrops. They're waiting for that era of John. And we opened with Black Knight. I couldn't believe it. And it was really funny. And then, of course, to go into Let Me Out was just sort of, it was the one real sort of rock tune on the album, and the only reason it doesn't get more space is because John wrote it, and he he just doesn't think it's one of his best tunes. So, but no, it was one of those moments where that was the audition. Yeah. Here's the wild thing: is I remember going to do that audition, and I got really lucky. I remember I did 2 takes and they were good. I remember I got really lucky and didn't hit any clangers, because I'm quite prone to that. And I remember it was in a really strange key, the solo. And the reason it was in a strange key was because the song on the album was in F sharp. But I distinctly remember the version we did as a demo was in A. So it was a minor third higher. And I remember Ross said, hey, what would you do in the verses? And I said, I wouldn't really know. There's no verse. There's no vocal. And John said, I'll grab a mic and chuck a vocal down for you. And he grabbed a mic, grabbed a 57 and stood there in his room. And he was hitting like high G's, like I'm talking 15th fret on your E string high, in his lounge room. No warm up, just stood there and did it. I'm just sitting there going, you've got to be kidding me, you know. And I think after that I said, I still don't know what to play. You know, I was in shock. And I remember, because I remember the key was different when we did it for the album. And we just did a solo, and that was it.
That's so cool. So cool. Your solo work, you've put out a couple of solo albums, and it's been a few years now.
Yeah, there's generally about a decade between albums.
Going back to some of the stuff we spoke about earlier with how much things have changed over the years, have you still got on your radar or the urge to put another album out of music?
Yeah, I've actually got a bit of a concept for it. It's very loose, shall we say? But look, I want to make sure it's something interesting. You know, yeah. I think the next thing I do, I might even just put it up. I might try and just do it all in house. You know, maybe I'll even play bass on it and stuff like that, and just do it all in house, and just put it on the internet as a thing where if people feel compelled, they can donate, you know, like send me a couple of bucks, you know. Well, I feel like that'd be only fair too, because I want this to be radically different, because I'm radically different, you know, like you change a lot in 10 years, and because I think Big Sky came out in 2003, and Dark Matter came out in 2008 or something, or 2009 or something like that, 2009 maybe. So yeah,
It's been a while.
yeah, it's been a while. No, hang on, that might have even been 2011 or something. I can't remember.
I've got. He's going to my notes. I got Big Sky 2002 and Dark Matter 2011.
There you go. Okay, God, the years are slipping away from me. So, yeah,
But a lot's changed. A lot's changed. Like I was thinking on the drive here, we're about to put our new album out, umming and ahhing and debating. Debating is a nice way of putting it, of how we put it out. And people still buy CDs, but nothing like they used to. Vinyl's had a bit of a resurgence, but vinyl's expensive, and you don't really you need really good distro for that. And it depends on the type of music as well.
And if you're a working band, you can sell them at your gigs.
Absolutely.
I'm none of those things.
That's right. So, I mean, we'll more than likely the way that we're approaching is very traditional for the most part. We'll have the CD you can get, and if we can pull enough money together, we'll do a vinyl release as well. I can hear Tim cringing because we had a bad experience with that in the past, but I'm pretty keen on it. But we'll do the album. But I've seen a lot of bands, and I remember Neil Peart from Rush saying this years and years ago when all the sort of the Napster stuff and the digital downloads and the CDs weren't being bought anymore, and he said, I don't even want to release albums anymore. I'll just release single songs and that's it. And what's the point? And I was thinking on the way here, because it's been quite a while since you put out an album, whether you would toy with different ways of putting things out. And you sort of alluded to that, where, would you just put a song out?
That's what
an album out.
That's what I sort of considered was, just finish a tune and put it up and say, there you go, and it's sort of almost like Patreon. Is that the thing? Yeah, where it's just sort of
crowdfunding, sort of.
Yeah, if you think, I think this tune's worth $1, so all right, throw me $1. It's like whatever you want to do, or donate it to charity or something. I don't know. It's like, and like I said, if to be fair to the public, like if it's a radically different direction from the last thing, a lot of this stuff you've got to just buy it, sound unheard or sight unseen, and at least it gives me the option to just do whatever I feel like, and if you don't like it, no harm done. It's exactly like, it's not like I've got anything stylistically to live up to. Like Big Sky I really enjoyed that album because a lot of it was written on acoustic guitar, like sort of chord melody sort of stuff, and then I adapted it to a band thing. And Dark Matter, I got to have some fun and play some heavy riffs. So I realised, like, man, I've never played heavy guitar before. Like, this was the first time I got to play some 7-string stuff, and must have been a bit of Planet X rubbing off on me, But I just thought, well, I'll have some fun and do that. Play some odd meter sort of prog sort of direction stuff, and this thing I'd like to just try something else and do something different and obviously see what happens.
And I think you alluded to this. The intention changes, doesn't it? Years and years ago, putting out an album, you got something to say, or you've got a statement, you're trying to prove yourself, or whatever it is, and you want to find success, whatever that means. But maybe these days it's a little bit different as well. So you're putting music out for a different purpose,
Well, I mean, I just did an album with a friend of mine from the States. His name's Chris Buck. He's a bass player, and Marco Miniman played drums on it.
Yeah.
And it's the project's called Three Crows.
Right.
Okay. And it was really interesting, actually, like, because, Chris and Marco had done all the tracks, and they sent me just bass and drums. And then it was up to me to sort of just interpret that. Well, Chris would give me guidance and say, this melody I want you to play here and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of the harmony was up for grabs, and so I did it that way. But just my point is, I never approached that project as a live project. Like, you'd need at least a keyboard player or another guitar player to pull it off, because I wanted to overdub.
Yep.
And my albums are all the same. Like, if you wanted to reproduce some of that stuff faithfully, you'd need about 4 guitar players. And it's like, well, I make an album for a listening experience. I want people to enjoy that experience as a listener. Like, if I was always fascinated with the way Hendrix would, like, you listen to All Along the Watchtower from Electric Ladyland, and it's just this beautiful, orchestrated, layered masterpiece. And then you hear him at the Isle of Wight concert, and it's just, there's the trio. That's right. And it's still great. Cool. They're both great, but radically different. Like, they're both. Ian Moss would do it. He would go out and play just trio and do Telephone Booth and all those classic tunes of his. And I mean, hey, Mossy could get up there and play the spoons, and as long as he was singing, I'd be happy.
He's been doing stuff on his own, like in the last few years.
That's
his
right,
own acoustic stuff, and I mean that scared the shit out of me. But but that's him. And
but that's right, he can do it.
That's right.
But yeah, I always love to make albums from that perspective, where it's like, well, yeah, if you need to do something really bizarre, sometimes things that just sonically that would be unplayable live, where you retune the guitar to get a certain texture or something. Not to try and impress people with something impossible, just if you retune it and do some weird harmonics or something, and right in the middle of the tune, like it's, as long as it's valid for the song, then go ahead and do it.
That's right. Well, there's no real rules to it anyway, and it's to scratch an itch, but it's also, I mean, Tim has the same sort of approach with us. He's a mastermind in the studio, and he'll put layers of, like, ridiculous number of layers of vocals, like hundreds of voices in there, and then he'll have orchestral stuff and layered guitars and just, like, over the top. It sounds great. But we scratch our heads when we get into a practice space to start rehearsing for a tour, and we're trying to work out what songs to put together. And we're like, oh, can't play that one. Oh, I don't know about that one.
Right.
Or we're trying to dumb stuff down so we can pull it off. Or in more recent times, we started to do some backing tracks that we'll have on a click track, just to fill in some sections. But I think Tim, I'm talking on behalf of him at the moment. He's probably cringing right at this moment. But his approach has always been just, there's no rules, go over the top, make it all about that listening experience, as you said.
That's right,
Because the shows come and go, and people have great memories of going to awesome shows over the years. But the shows themselves don't stick. It's the albums, it's the records, it's the CDs, it's now the MP3s, it's whatever it is, but the music remains. I mean, even for me, like, I continuously discover music from the 70s or the 80s and the stuff that was before I was even a thought, and I go, oh, this is incredible.
Well, like I said, when I started working with a lot of the fusion guys, and some of them, pop music and rock was an alien concept to them. They kind of dabbled in it, but they really didn't have much knowledge of it. And I remember they used to talk about a lot of rock music, knowing that there were endless takes involved, and to get the right take, and that's not real. It didn't, like a lot of jazz albums, they just cut them live. And I'm like, yeah, but if you boil it all down to that, then what are you left with? Well, you've got Kind of Blue, so you might as well chuck out Dark Side of the Moon, Sgt. Pepper's, Pet Sounds. I mean, rock and pop is agonised over for a reason, and the thing that fascinates me is, particularly in keyboard world, like in Pink Floyd world, for instance. Like, I listen back to albums like Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here, and a lot of the sounds that was it Rick Wright, the keyboard player? And some of the sounds he pulled out of those old analog synths, like, they still hold up today. That you can tell they're old analog synths, but they work right in the context of the song. Whereas you listen to some of the fusion albums from the 80s, and they are the worst sounds. They're like patch number 4 on a DX7, because I think the keyboard player probably thought, I'm just so much of a gun, I can play giant steps at 3,000 beats per minute. Somebody's gone patch 4, which immediately will just date the whole thing, Whereas the rock and pop players put all their energy into the sound of things. How does it sound? What are we trying to get across here? And whereas I think with a lot of the better the musicianship, they put less into that and more into just, well, I got the chops, man, so check this out, I'm playing this scale and all that sort of thing. It's very rare you find where the two meet, and when you do, then you've got a formidable, like Scott Henderson, like Scott's is,
definitely.
He's so hardcore about his sound, and he's really hardcore about his albums too. Like, he will overdub a lot, and then he just figures out how the hell he's going to do it live. But he really loves to layer stuff, which I think is fantastic. Yeah. Like, it's rare that you'll find a musician from his walk of life that will go down that road and also really care about his guitar sound. Like, I mean, he's agonises over that stuff. So,
and I think it just comes down to what the music is and what lends to it. So, you get a lot of people that push their nose up at that sort of concept of overdubbing everything and putting a million layers in there and making it over the top. But they're usually people that play punk music or just pub rock or
Right,
something that's
yeah.
very simplistic, and so they're all about basically recording live.
The immediacy of it.
That's right.
Get the energy down.
And
which I totally appreciate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it just comes down to what you're playing, really. And
What are you going for?
What
Yeah.
lends to it and what's going to make it, give it its essence.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny, like I said, when you catch an instance where the two things happen, like I was listening to the Guitar Wank podcast. It's great, that great podcast
Yeah.
that Scott and Bruce Foreman and Troy McCubbin do.
Yep.
And they had John Suhr on, the guitar builder, and just right at the very end of a very long sort of 3-episode chat with him, and they said, what bands do you really like? And he said, well, I really like this band called Big Wreck.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, I should remember that name. I'll check them out. I've never heard of them. And I was out doing a tour with James Ryan, my good friend from Melbourne, and right out of the blue, I checked my email, and James has sent me the Big Wreck album on iTunes. He said, I think you should hear this, you know. Just complete coincidence.
Yeah.
And it was an album called Albatross, and I forget what the guitar player's name is, Ian Thornley or something. He's the guitar player singer. This guy, this band, like, what a thorough badass. I mean, he sings like Chris Cornell, plays like bloody Steve Morse, plays slide like Derek Trucks. And just sounds like the whole band. It's just, and you know, this is a band that's been struggling away probably since the mid-2000s, and I don't even know if they still exist anymore. I just remember sitting there listening to this album going, dude, if I'd written this, I would have thought, well, should I get the Grammys now, or do you want to wait till the formality of, you know, the show? Like, I would have just thought, well, it's all over. If I could have created something this good, it's one of the greatest albums by a rock band. Like, I used to cling on to the Foo Fighters because I thought, well, at least they're playing rock, you know?
Yeah.
But this is another level beyond that, texturally and
I just wrote down in my
harmonically.
notebook there, so I've never even heard of them. So
No, I think they're Canadian.
Yeah,
I think.
I've got something to listen
Big
to on
Wreck.
the drive back.
But the funny thing was, I found I was listening to the album and the actual song called Albatross. And I thought, Jesus, what are these guys like live, you know? And so I found them playing at the Surf Factory, doing a live gig, and it was better than the album.
Wow.
This guy's singing is just, he could just put the guitar down and sing, and you go, Jesus Christ, that guy's an incredible singer. Or he could not sing and just play the guitar, and you go, who the hell's this guitar player? So these people are out there, you know, it's amazing, it really is.
And now, because it's just so easy to discover music, you know, like that, you get a link to iTunes or whatever it is, and now you got Spotify. I mean, I've got a group of mates that we talk to each other on Facebook, and someone will just do a screenshot of their Spotify thing, say, check this out, this came out this morning, like brand new release, and suddenly I've got it synced up on my phone, I'm listening to it, and there'll be a lot of haters that are listening to this podcast that I know quite well, and they'll be saying, well, that's bad because it's too easy to get music and people should be paying for it, blah, blah, blah. Putting all that aside, it's amazing how quickly it is to discover music and just discover these gems, and it's incredible.
It's important to keep the line of communication open amongst us, you know, like, because like I said, you know, I heard this on a podcast, then a friend sent it to me, and I've told you about it, and other people tell me, like, I'll be sitting having a chat with friends, and I'm like, you know, what music you heard lately? And, I've heard this band, they're really good, you should check them out. So the phone comes out and you write a note, you know, and you go check it out. Like, that's how we find music now, because you're right, there's so much out there, you don't even know where to start.
No way.
So, but it's important when you're just chatting to your friends, what have you heard lately, you know? And, oh, here's a short list, here's 5 things, and that's how you maybe not all of them will stick, but like I said, James just sent me this this album, and it's Desert Island Discs. So, well,
with the wonders of technology these days, I'll be syncing that up on Spotify on the drive back, so I'll have a listen and let you know.
Definitely.
It's really cool. Keeping on the time, there's a few things, I'll try and condense them down, but I have to talk to you about ESP. So I don't know if you recall, but 10 years ago, maybe, you had a MySpace account.
Oh, yeah, I remember those days.
And I had a MySpace account, and we were over in Japan, and we met up with Makoto, and we went through the factory in Tokyo, and he went into the paint room, and he was showing some guitars, and he goes, oh, that's Brett Garsted's guitar. And I went, whoa, took a photo, and I sent it to you.
Was that the purple one?
Yes.
Oh, that one hanging up there.
Over there, yeah.
Sure.
So, looking at your wall of guitars over there, you've got quite a few different guitars, but is ESP still your mainstay? For the most part?
Not particularly. Well, yeah, yes and no. Like, I mean, I don't have a relationship with them anymore. That just kind of fizzled out, you know. But, man, what a great relationship it was. They were awesome. CMI, who distribute ESP, were really the backbone of that. You know, they got me out doing clinics for them, and I loved it. You know, it was just great. And I've got the blue Horizon and the purple Horizon. That was actually just meant to be a one-off idea. I just wanted to check it out, and then unbeknownst to me, they kind of put it into production here in Australia. So I was a bit shocked. You know, I thought, oh, well, I wasn't really intending that, but it's still a great axe. I mean, and that what do they call them? The vintage, like the sort of
is it the original series?
Yeah, I forget what they're called. They're like Strats, you know, and that's a great axe, that thing. But I've actually gone back to playing my old Sunburst Strat that my mother bought me when I was about 14. And it's got a different neck on it. So yeah, I'm in that world. Like I played an SG for a long time, and but so yeah, I just play whatever I want now. But because I don't have a guitar endorsement. Like I got approached by this company called Vola. There's one over there, and that all fizzled out. I was going to sort of hook up with them, and they sort of just pulled out on it. So
well, that looks like it's straight out of bloody 1987.
Very strange looking instrument.
Interesting.
But apparently, you know, they're doing quite well. But I don't know, they're not really known here in Australia.
No.
But no, that just never went anywhere. And oh look, you know, guitar endorsements. I mean, ultimately, I mean, what do they mean? When I talked to that company, I said, you're going to have to give me about 6 guitars if you want me to exclusively play your guitars. Like, you know, I'm going to need a lot if whatever the gig calls for, I'm going to play that. And so, yeah, I mean, I just couldn't even foresee a moment where that's happening. It is ironic that we go do all these gigs with Farnham, and I'm always in the headline act. I mean, we are the headline act, and I'm the guy up there playing his old Strat. You know, it's like. So
are you playing the ESP Strat?
Oh, I was. Yeah, I was using that exclusively. Like I think for the past 2 years, I went back to. I just wanted to shoot up the middle of everything, and Strats are about the best thing I can think of to do that. And that's a rock solid guitar, that thing. What the hell do they call Vintage Plus? That's Vintage Plus. And after my mother passed away, I was nearly going to buy one of Scott's Sir Strats. Because I thought, well, you know, I just know it's going to be a good one, because I know Scott wouldn't put his name on anything that wasn't great, so it'll save a lot of time. But with the dollar and everything, it's just so brutally expensive, you know. And then I just thought, well, why don't I get my old Strat fixed up? And ironically, it's actually got a John Suhr neck on it. Like it's back when I was living in the States in '98, I met this fantastic guitar, like a luthier there named Bill Asher.
Okay. Billy's
awesome. He works on like Jackson Browne and George Thorogood and David Lindley's guitars. He's a legend in Santa Monica. And his mum was Elizabeth Montgomery, who was bewitched. So, yeah, just a little fascinating little tidbit there. But anyway, I was talking to Billy, and he said, hey, I've got these really good Strat and Telly necks, and they're just big solid lumps of maple that John Suhr cut. Now, I think it might have been when John was still working at Fender.
Yep.
And the Telly's got one of his necks on it. That's what that is. And I got one for the Strat. And I had my good friend Scott Cherry here in Castlemaine at Captain Cherry's Guitar Lounge put it all together for me, and Mark Emanuele helped me out with the pickups and all that sort of stuff. It's been through a lot, and got a nice Callahan bridge for it from America, and
it's a full circle, isn't it?
Yeah, it went through a lot, you know. But I mean, that guitar was just hanging on the wall, and I thought, why isn't it being played? And it's great, holds tune like beautifully, and I can do dive bombs again now. So. Wheatley loved it. When I started bringing the ESP out, and he said, I'm loving the dive bombs. So yeah, good to have a whammy bar back again.
That's cool. Fun. Well, I'm going to quickly grab my phone, because yesterday I was talking to Mark in our band. I said, I'm coming down, going to meet up with you. And he's like, got a few questions. So then he's given me a bunch of questions here, and I don't know what his game is, but you'll have to bear with me. Take this with a grain of salt. So he said 10 questions with Mork, and then I'm going to cue some intro music right here. So bear with me. So I'm going to read these out. Number 1, is there a particular guitar you always end up using when recording or playing live? So we kind of answered that before.
Well, yeah, it's changed, you know.
Yep.
It used to be the blue ESP, the Horizon Custom. And, you know, once I sort of latch on to something, that's what it is. And then it was the Purple Horizon for a long time. Then it was the SG for a long time. That's what I took to every session, every gig. And then it was the Vintage Plus, the Strat. And now it's going to be the old Sunburst Strat. I'm just going to go down that road. And like the Telly was what I played for years in the States exclusively. And they change you, you know. The guitars, like the Strats are tougher to play. They change the way you play. Like I certainly wouldn't be doing the Let Me Out solo on that thing. Mind you, old age has sort of taken care of that too. But yeah, they will affect the way you play and change you as a player. So, which I kind of like, you know.
Yep.
It's just
keep you on your toes.
It's just nice to move on.
Yeah, definitely. What brand of guitar pickups do you prefer?
Well, I'm a Damasio endorsee.
Okay.
The Strat has Seymour Duncans in it at the moment, and that's because I'm waiting on some Damasios to come all the way from America.
Okay.
So, but the Duncans are lovely too. You know, like I've got Duncans in pretty much everything else, but I've also got some beautiful pickups. Virgil Arlo pickups from the States. They contacted me a while ago and were kind enough to send me some pickups, and they're just stunning. So yeah, I've got the Virgil Arlos in the blue ESP. And I've actually got a set of Strat pickups that I'm going to put in my old black Strat that's underneath that couch you're sitting on. Yeah, that's the Strat I played in the original You're the Voice clip. So yeah, but I'm going to...
Can I have a look at that before I go? I just want to have a good...
That'll make it a really nice old 70s Strat.
That's cool.
Be beautiful.
That's really cool. Yeah. All right, question number 3. This is a bit of a controversial one. Do you think fret wraps were created by guitarists with horrible muting technique?
Oh, you mean the hair tie things, right? Oh, no, I think they're just they present a possibility. Like once you put that, I don't use one personally, but I see, like Greg Howe uses one every now and then, I see, and I think even Guthrie uses one, doesn't he?
I'm not sure.
I think I've seen a few guys use them, and I think, once you shove that thing on there, it opens up other possibilities that maybe you couldn't do those things without it. And in fact, what's the guy, Dave Martone? Joel Hoekstra pointed this out to me. Okay. He was playing me a Dave Martone track, and he said, "What do you think he's doing here?" And it was this weird harmonics thing, and I said, "I have no idea," you know. And Dave, I think, took the hair tie thing and positioned it over the harmonic on the fret, and was using it, so it was almost like triggering harmonics. So it just goes to, it can be creative.
There you go. Oh, there you go, Mark. Number 4, who was your biggest influence on your guitar playing when you were a beginner?
Richie Blackmore.
Richie Blackmore.
Absolutely, Richie Blackmore. Yeah, that's why that Sunburst Strat's there.
Was that Deep Purple or Rainbow?
Deep Purple.
Yep.
Deep Purple, but I saw Rainbow. My dear brother, drove me and my 2 cousins, who I was in the band with, down to Festival Hall. I've got the program floating around here somewhere, and we saw the original Ronnie James Dio, Cozzy Powell, Jimmy Bain, Tony Carey.
What album was that? Do you know?
Rainbow Rising. It was the Rainbow Rising tour, and we had the worst seats in the world, so we could see Ronnie all night. We're off to the side, and only Richie when he stepped forward, but we got to see him smash the Strats. So. And the big Rainbow, it was epic. Yeah, epic.
That's so cool. That's so cool. My wife...
And I saw Purple when they toured again in 80... When was that? Like 84 or 83? They did the Perfect Strangers tour.
Yeah, good album.
And I went to... They played at the... I think it was called the Entertainment Centre down opposite what was to become the Rod Laver, I think. Okay. I don't think that even existed back then. I don't know. And I remember the first night I went, I bought 2 tickets, the first and third night. First night I went and, seats sucked all the way up the back on the side. And the third night, I was about 6 rows back. And I thought, the minute those lights go down, I'm running for it, man. And I just got straight into the crash bar right in front of Richie. And there was one moment where he made direct eye contact with me. And if looks could kill, he would have killed me, and I loved it. So, it was great.
Well, I must say, that Rainbow story, my wife is the biggest Rainbow fan.
And
she loves Gates of Babylon, Stargazer and all that, and so she'd love that.
Yeah, I'm so glad I got to see that.
But that eye contact thing, and I've said this story a bunch of times, but when Iron Maiden came back out, I think it was like 2007 or 2008, and they hadn't been out since like the early 90s, And we saw them at Acer Arena. Oh, we actually went to 5 of the shows. A couple of us went and did. We were just this fanatical sort of fan tour and followed them around. And it was in Sydney at Acer Arena, and we're out in the crowd and we're in front of Adrian Smith. And Adrian Smith just looked at us, and I've never screamed like a teenage girl in my life. And we looked at each other and we're almost in tears, and we just thought, he looked at us, and and then afterwards we were like kind of a bit embarrassed, like, well, did that really happen? It's like, yeah, that was pretty.
I saw Maiden at the Palais on on the Number of the Beast tour. Yeah. Oh. So yeah, and I saw him again. This is really funny because I was teaching at MI at the time, and I had a lot of European students. There's about 4 of them, and Swedish guys and German guys. And I remember one of them came in one day and he said, "Hey, Iron Maiden and Rob Halford and Queensryche are playing at Irvine Meadows." They said, if we bought you a ticket, would you go with us? And I said, hell yeah, I'll go. And they said, fantastic, will you drive? I was like, you bastards. Like, they all piled into my truck, you know.
Designated driver.
Yeah, I'm the designated driver. But man, what a great gig that was. I remember I was thinking, I feel like a real old guy being at this. And then I thought, hang on a minute. I was 18 when Maiden, when they hit it with Number of the Beast. Yeah. And yeah, sure enough, there's a whole bunch of late 30s guys in T-shirts with hair. And, so I fit in.
Okay. I could talk about that stuff for ages. Yeah. Next question. Oh, here's this good one, Mark. Number 5. Do you ever see pictures of yourself from back in the day and think, damn, I looked really good with a mullet?
I see pictures of myself from back in the day and go, who the hell is that guy? Like, I don't even know who that guy is. It is literally like looking at another individual. I don't know.
Did you find with... I guess visually you had a bit of that with Farnham just because of the era, but with Nelson, and just given what you said before about just the change and how different the American market was, did you find that you had to be wardrobed? You like your whole look was tailored for you? And,
that's what I was saying. Yeah. Like it was that organic thing of bands just being bands, which thankfully we got back during the grunge era. We sort of came back to an era of common sense, and stripping everything back But yeah, this weird mentality that there had to be this common thread through an image. I don't know where that came from. Maybe Kiss or someone. I don't know. But that was a hell of a culture shock.
But did they have like a designer or something like
Absolutely.
That came in?
Fashion consultant.
Measured you up, got all this stuff.
Yeah, they probably made more money out of that whole thing than I did. In fact, I guarantee they did.
I bet they did.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Come on, Mark. All right, number 6. If you could tour with any band or artist, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh, man. I just tour with Farnham.
Yeah?
I'm happiest when I'm on stage with him. Like I said, he's my favourite singer. I get to play with, like I said, long before I got to work with him.
Yep.
Like I was listening to the Uncovered stuff, and then of course the Net album, and I'm just in awe of this guy as a singer. Like I said, I'm listening to rock and metal, and I'm going, this guy kills them all. Who's this dude? And
he's the ultimate.
I ended up in a band with him. I remember going on, because when we played in our pub band around here, we all just stared at the floor. We were the most uninteresting people to watch in the world. And I remember going on stage with John, and I thought, my God, it's like having Captain America as your front man. You're invincible. He could sing anything. His voice never blew out, and no one worked a stage like that guy. He could get corpses to jump up and dance.
And I think one thing that I've noticed, and especially he just crosses so many generations, and even especially in the metal world, I mean, people hold him on a high pedestal.
When I was out doing those drum clinic tours with Bobby Rock, I mean, this is 1990 or something, and we were out in the middle of God knows where, like Kansas or somewhere, and the only intro Bobby had for me was, this is Brett Garsed on guitar, and he used to play with John Farnham in Australia. That was it, because Nelson hadn't happened. There was no other reference point. Yeah. And the amount of singers that would come up, and they was like, I just got dragged here by my drummer from our band, but you work with John Farnham? He was like this. He was like the Yngwie Malmsteen of singers. Like, you start to hear this buzz about this guitar player or this drummer or this whoever, and John was that guy.
And I think if, I don't know if it's a frustration, but there's this thing that is felt by a lot of metal musicians where it's like, if only he was just in front of a really heavy band. because his vocals would have been just incredible, because he's such a versatile vocalist, and he has little examples of that over the years.
Yeah.
And he's tried different styles, and it just sounds amazing. But a lot of friends of mine, it's like, oh, imagine him with like a really sort of like just like that 80s metal sort of thing.
You know, we did a version of Black Dog, the Zeppelin tune.
Yeah.
And I always just thought, imagine if we did a cover version of Stargazer. Could you imagine John singing that? Like, but you know, that's the thing. It's like, I'm sure Guthrie Govan gets it too. Like, Guthrie can play almost pretty much anything. So, I mean, I'm sure everyone imagines him being in a prog band or a metal band or a country band or a fusion band, and poor Guthrie's like, well, what about what I want, you know? And I think John's that way too. Like, he can sing R&B, he can sing rock, he can sing soul, he's such a great singer. Like, I mean, the guy can manipulate his voice to do anything he wants.
That's it.
And so we've all got an opinion, you know. And at the end of the day, he's like, well, what about what I want to sing? You know?
That's right.
And that's the thing. He sings what he wants. You know, he doesn't get pushed around. He's if he doesn't like a lyric, he won't sing it. If he doesn't like the way a song's going, he won't touch it. So it's up to him.
And I think that's why he's adored by so many people. And even like just going back to the metal stuff, I mean, we've covered "Playing to Win."
Sure.
And
and
there's been a lot of people. We've got I probably shouldn't mention this yet because it's actually, I don't know when this is coming out. No, I won't. But we're covering another Farnsey song pre-Whispering Jack.
Right.
It's very sort of 80s, and we could probably narrow it down pretty quickly. That's going to be a bonus track on our Australian release. So
there's a song on the Playing to Win album, the LRB album, called "When Cathedrals Were White," and that's a good one. That's, you know, we did it back in, what was it, 96, just before we did the big In the Round tour. We did a short sort of acoustic promo tour through Asia. And it was just a stripped down version of the band. We ended up in the Philippines, and we get off the plane and there's this throng of people there to meet him.
Oh yeah, okay.
And we're like, even John's like, well, what's going on here? Apparently, Please Don't Ask Me, the song off the ballad off the Uncovered album, was a huge hit there. And John immediately looked at Wheatley and said, "Where's the royalties?"
Good luck.
But apparently it had become like the yardstick for every male tenor singer in the Philippines. If you can sing that, then okay, now we're talking, you know. And it became just the thing to do, like the giant steps of singing, you know, if you like. If you can cut that, then you can move on, sort of thing.
Well, I definitely know in Southeast Asia a lot of the AOR soft rock stuff is just huge. They've got a massive love for it. And Journey's singer these days was Arnell.
That young fella from...
And Neil found him on YouTube, but he was in a covers band, just could emulate these amazing singers. But I remember being in Singapore not too long ago, and we were in a bar watching a covers band, and they played Please Don't Ask Me and Help as well, but John's version, and it's just incredible. But it's such a big soft rock and AOR and all that sort of stuff. It's a massive thing even now, and it's I mean, I love that stuff. So you go over there and people are just frothing over it, and it's like, oh, it's incredible. It's just, it's so different. But crossing so many different markets. All right, Mark, I've got to get back to you. I'm almost done.
We digress.
And we digress. Now, I might come back to, I don't know what he means by this. Maybe you might be able to fill in the blanks, but if you don't know how to answer this, then we can pass it. Do you wish you'd been asked to feature on a Michael Jackson song?
I did play on a Michael Jackson song.
I don't know if he's trying to...
It's not a... I don't wish I'd been asked to feature on one, because it was such a unique... You mean probably sort of like Eddie did with Beat It. But that was such a unique moment in time with the right guy. You know, like if that's such a singular moment where the song was right and Eddie was the right guy for the gig. Like, they tried it later with Slash and a few other people, but it just never... That moment was just the moment when it just worked. I did actually play on it. It was a song Michael Jackson wrote for the Kobe earthquake victims, and Michael didn't sing on it, but it was his tune. And I ended up doing some sessions with this guy named Brad Buxter, and he was Michael's MD, and it was just one of those things where, you know, I was just kind of out of work, and he knew that he could call me at any moment of the day, and I'd put the PlayStation down and I'd go do a session for him. He could throw me $100 and I'd go home, you know. And I did some really interesting sessions for him. Yeah, this one was an actual proper one where I played acoustic guitar on this song, and it was released, and all the rest of it. But one of the others was just wild. He was a really manic sort of guy, and he took me into this room, and he said, "You know how to work Pro Tools, right?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And he just had a Line 6 pod. He said, "Just plug into that." He said, "I've got this riff here." And he said, "Just give me a dozen different versions of it. Country, metal, rock, whatever you can think of. Bye." And he just left. And so I pressed play, and it's Michael singing the riff.
Wow.
And because TJ's girlfriend at the time was working for Brad as his personal assistant.
Right, okay.
And her job was to transcribe Brad's answering machine messages. And so we're up in TJ's apartment one night hanging out, and Linda, his girlfriend's, on the phone. And she just walks over to me and gives me the phone. And I'm sitting there, and there's this voice in there going, "Okay, Brad, we got to work hard on this riff. Okay, I'm kind of hearing this." You know, and I'm thinking, "Oh, this is one of TJ's mates having a laugh." And then all of a sudden, it's dawned on me, and I've just looked at her, and she's gone, "It is." And I'm listening to Michael leave a message for Brad. So, yeah, it was a trip.
I didn't. Mark's gonna bloody hit me later on because I didn't realise that. So you recorded on something, but it didn't end up as a Michael, like a Jackson song?
This was just a demo.
It was a demo.
A demo thing. Yeah, that's how, I guess that was the process that he'd go through to do demos, where he would sing an idea.
Yeah.
And then you just have people... Look, they could have had a flautist come in and do flute versions of it later on. Who knows
where... It's trying to make it a reality of whatever the idea
it probably
was.
Went nowhere. But
yeah,
it was just interesting. Oh, but that one track I played on was... He wrote it, so... It was kind of an indirect... It's my Michael Jackson story.
Oh, well, this leads into the next question, which it seems like a little bit of a jab, so Mark, calm yourself. Question 8. Who would win in a three-way guitar battle? Eddie Van Halen / you, the guy that never featured on a Michael Jackson song?
I think... you know what? I think I'd just pal up with Eddie and we beat the shit out of Slash, frankly.
Love it. Okay, we're almost there. Question 9. Are you still interested in lifting?
Lifting?
Yeah, lifting weights.
Oh, I'm very interested in it. I don't know, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Like, okay. I work out. Yep. I mean, I'm more interested in aerobic fitness these days, you know. I'm an old guy trying to stay above ground, if you know what I mean. So it's just, keep the heart and lungs strong and try and keep the flab under control. And I'd love to get back into the weights, but to what degree, I don't know. You know, it's like, I think because I didn't really keep it up for a long time. Every time I try to get back into it now, I seem to get an injury.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I'm having more fun just doing free body weight exercise, push-ups and sit-ups and that sort of thing. And I do a really hard HIIT workout every morning. So, it's important to keep on top of it. You know, we're musos, we can be just so lazy, you know. And as you get older, like, you know, I'll be 56 this year, so I mean, you know, shit, I'm only 10 years away from being a pensioner. So now is the time to fight, you know, to fight for mobility. Otherwise, it's the walking frame looms. You know?
Well, Mark's a big unit, and he loves to lift a bit of weight here and there. So he'll be glad to hear that. And question 10, which sort of feeds into that. Because he's got a bit of a reputation, Mark does. What's your favourite source of protein, and why is it eggs?
You know what? Here's the thing. When I was younger, see, I just sort of fell into weightlifting because I never played sports. I never played any footy or cricket. I tried to play footy and I couldn't get a game. And then the weird thing was, after I got into the band, I'd just go to the footy games to watch my mates, and the coach kept running up saying, "We're short on players. Have you got your gear?" You know, so I'd played a couple of games, but by then I was into guitar and it just wasn't interesting anymore. And so I was never a sports guy. And my good friend Daryl Madden here in town just alerted me to lifting weights. And I thought, that sounds like fun. Let's do that. And then we sort of fell into powerlifting because we'd go to a gym up in Bendigo, a guy named Laurie Butler, and we'd start going to powerlifting competitions. And it just became an interest. It was my sporting interest, like anyone would get into playing tennis or whatever. And I did like the fact that it kept you fit, and it was nice to be strong, you know. It was handy, like lifting quad boxes and things, like, you know, it came in handy. So
get Brett to do that.
Yeah, I loved it. I liked the end of the gig was the workout. I loved just, you know, we'd try and load all the gear in as quick as we could, work up a sweat. It was fun. And of course you got energy to burn back then. But I think it's imperative, any young lifters out there listening to this, don't stop. Like, because if you stop, like, you take a couple of years off and then think, I think I might have a go at that again. And of course the ego says you're still back there.
Before,
Well, you know, that's when you can hurt yourself. And, you know, I've dodged some pretty bad injuries Luckily, I'm feeling pretty good, but no ruptured discs or anything like that. But keep it going. If you keep it going, like Bobby Rock never stopped lifting, and Bobby's been a vegan for the past 30 years.
Wow.
Like he's just unbelievable. Like if Bob walked off the street into a regional bodybuilding competition, I think he would place. Like he would. He looks amazing.
Wow.
His health is off the charts, and he's never stopped going to the gym and training. But even him, I was just talking to him today, and we used to squat some ridiculous weight back then. Like, it was just funny because I was right in the middle of my powerlifting thing when I went to the States, and I remember telling the guys at the powerlifting gym, I said, yeah, the drummer for the band loves lifting weights. And straight away they said, hey, what's his squats like? And I said, massive. I said, this guy loves training legs, because most of the time rock and rollers just do upper body and they don't do any leg stuff. And no, Bobby was hardcore. Like even the big guys would stop and look at us squat in the gym, and we were moving some pretty impressive stuff back then for a bunch of rock and rollers. It was. So.
We should have done the lifting podcast. We've got some good stories from that. So that's the end of the questions. And Mork's final words. You're one of the finest players in the world. Thank you for the inspiration. And then he's put cue outro music. So I don't know what I'm going to add in there. And maybe he's got an idea. He can send it to me later. There you go, Mork. You can thank me later. I think that's a good way to wrap it up. We've gone all over the place, jumped here and there, and I'm pretty sure I've covered most things. There's probably one last thing, and sorry, we've been talking for a while. You did a tour, and I thought it was far more recent than what it was, but you did a tour with Paul Stanley.
Yeah, that's right.
In Australia, and I thought it was something like 2011 or something like that, but it was 2007.
2007, yeah.
So it's definitely a while back now. Was that just like all the other opportunities in the past through somebody that you knew, network, and...
Paul Merkovich. That was back when... Do you remember when they were doing the Rockstar shows, when they had In Excess were looking for a singer, and then they had that they had that band with Gilby Clarke and Tommy Lee, and it was supposed to be Jason Newsted from Metallica,
That's right.
and they were looking for a singer, and they had the band, and Paul Merkovich was the musical director and keyboard player.
Wow. And
the band was Raphael Norea was the guitar player, and I knew Raphael from MI. I saw him the day he showed up, and this Brazilian guy with dreads comes in, and he starts jamming, and I said, what are you even here? I said, you're just here to get phone numbers, right? He was so damn good. I was like, what are you going to learn here? And so he started just hanging with all the jazz guitarists, and Raphael's just a monster, and I forget who the rhythm guitar player was. Jimmy someone, a fantastic player and an amazing singer. And he was off touring with Avril Lavigne or something. And because Paul said, he said, as far as I'm concerned, that show should have been called Rockstar House Band, because he said, I couldn't give a stuff about the rest of the singers. All I watched was the band, and I said, I want that band. Yeah. So he grabbed them, and I think they did the album, the Live to Win album. And when they were coming out here, Jimmy couldn't do it. And Paul called me up and said, you want to do it? And the funny thing was I had to fly to America to rehearse an audition.
I was going to ask you how that worked.
And then fly all the way back to do the tour, which was very funny. I mean, it was weird because just before that, I was in the UK doing guitar clinics.
Yep.
And it was sort of sucked the fun out of it because I had to spend all my time, instead of sightseeing and looking around the UK, I had to spend all my time in the hotel learning the songs. And I was lucky enough to get to meet Guthrie Govan and Paul and James Cornford, and we all went out for a curry, and it was just a great night. And I remember saying to Guthrie, and that beautiful dry way manner Guthrie has, and I said, I'm going to do a tour with Paul Stanley. I'm playing rhythm guitar. And he said, you're playing rhythm guitar. He said, did somebody miss a meeting? Brilliant. And I said, no, Raphael's on lead guitar. We're covered. Trust me. And I was really nervous about meeting Paul because I'd never really seen any interviews with him. I'd only ever seen Gene Simmons' interview, and Gene really ramps it up for the interviews. I mean, they go into full interview mode. And I said to Paul Merkovich, we were driving up to his house, and I said, is Paul a nice guy? And he said, so nice, he's almost weird. You know?
Right.
And what a guy, the nicest guy, what a totally humble, lovely person. Like one of the, I've worked with, with Farnham, Olivia Newton-John, and Paul Stanley would be the three biggest stars I've done any kind of long-term work with. And they are the nicest, most wonderful people to work for, and they are the yardstick that I judge everybody else by.
Wow.
So if I walk into a room and I don't give a stuff who it is, if they're an asshole, they get the finger and I walk out. It's like, I've met these guys, they're not like that, what's your excuse?
That's right.
So that's it. No, Paul's, what a champion. Beautiful guy.
I saw the Wollongong show of that tour.
Right,
and,
right.
And yeah, fantastic. But I remember, I think I might have known just before the show that you were on guitar, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. I couldn't work out how the relationship, and I think, was it, no, actually, no, I'm getting stories mixed up. But it was definitely surreal seeing you on stage in this format with somebody as iconic as Paul Stanley, but also playing rhythm guitar as well. And it was sort of like this reserved sort of place in this very...
It was so much fun. The only thing I regretted was we had to wear in-ear monitors, and I thought, I'm finally standing in front of a roaring half stack, and I can't hear it, But it was a lot of singing,
Yeah.
Like Jimmy was an amazing singer. I had a lot of hard work to do there, so I was really grateful for the in-ear monitors for that regard. So
that's cool.
So,
That's awesome. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up. As I said, we've been all over the shop, but that was a lot of fun, and I'll certainly be letting all the people know that I've name dropped in here to listen to this episode.
Oh, fantastic!
Look, I think us in our band, we've been massive Farnham fans, and we've been fans of your playing for years. We've seen that through our own music and the way that we approach it, but also the covers and all that sort of stuff. And we even did a tour, I don't know what it was, about three and a half years ago, where we did a Playing to Win tour, or the Road to Farnsie, where we actually did an Australian tour, and the last date was in Melbourne, and was the night before the One Electric Day show at Werribee.
Oh, okay, right.
And so the whole premise of the entire tour was to just do the tour so we had enough money, and then we could hang around for the extra day and then go to Farnsie, and we saw that show.
Oh, cool. He's really shocked when he finds out that there's a whole bunch of heavy rockers that love him, or that are really into his... He's always really surprised.
It's
he never gets to meet him.
Yeah.
So
it's just one of those things, and even to this day, like just doing a lot of those touring circuits that are all the rage at the moment. There's a lot of great bands like from that era, like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. There's bands getting together, One Electric Day and Red Hot Summer and all that sort of stuff, and
they still sound great.
Amazing, amazing. They set the standard, and for a lot of us, I mean, a lot of my peers and friends are going to these shows and getting schooled of how to put on a show. And
well, John turned 70 this year. I think either this year or last year. I can't remember. Like, and I'm looking at him at the end of the gig. Like I said, we may be doing like Long Way to the Top, last song, and he's bouncing up and down on his feet, and right at the very end, he hits that high G, that 15th fret on your high E string, and I'm just standing there going, you've got to be shitting me. How does this even happen? Like, so yeah. You get the same show you got in 1986. So cool. That's really incredible.
So cool. Brett, thank you very much. Please show me this guitar that's sitting underneath this couch before I leave. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
If you want to dig in to Brett's back catalogue, learn more about him, follow him on the socials, you can go over to brettgarsed.com. Brett's also got social media pages as well, and I think all those links are on his website. Otherwise, you can click through on your podcast player, and there should be a bunch of clickable links in my show notes for this episode. Or you can go to andysocial.net and click on the actual show notes page for episode 167. And I'll have a bunch of video clips in there as well, and photos as well. So go in there, have a look, check it all out. And please, if you enjoy this episode, make sure you let Brett know. I'm sure Brett would love to hear from you. And I encourage you guys to do this with all the guests that are on the podcast. I think it's a great way to give some feedback to the people that have sacrificed is definitely the word, sacrifice some time to let me chew their ear off and be on the podcast. And it's just so much fun to be able to have these conversations. So if you guys can help me out, and if you do enjoy these particular episodes, please reach out to the guests and just let them know what you thought, even if it's publicly on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. I'm sure they would love to get that feedback as well. But Brett, thank you so much as always. brettgarsed.com. All right, before we wrap up this week's episode, as mentioned at the start, Lord has a new album. We've announced it. It's called Fallen Idols. It's going to be out at the end of April this year, 2019, and we have a brand new first single off the album, United, which you can go to lord.net.au/united, where you can check out the video clip. You can pre-order the special United bundle pack. There's lots of little interesting things in there, so go over and check it all out. And there's more info about the album as well. So make sure you go over there, lord.net.au/united, and you can go and check out all those details. And I really hope you enjoy the song. And I didn't mention at the start, this song, the first single off the album, is pretty in your face. It's ballsy. It is hard. It's heavy. So for some of you that have enjoyed some of our more melodic stuff, some of the lighter stuff in our back catalogue, don't fear. Because in true Lord fashion, we have an eclectic mix of all of our tastes, all churned and mixed together to create Lord albums. And so if you've loved Set in Stone, Ascendance, Digital Lies, etc., then I've got a funny feeling that you're really going to enjoy this new album as well, Fallen Idols. So don't freak out if this first single is too heavy on the senses. So stay tuned, there's more music to come. But if you do enjoy it, please share this around, share the links around, share the United link around, the video clip, the pre-order links, whatever it takes. And as mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we've been really busy the last several years. We've released a live album, massive box set, like a 4-disc box set. We've done EPs, re-recordings, etc. We've done a lot of work, and it's been great. However, it's been 5+ years since we've released Digital Lies, which was our last studio album. So it's been long overdue, but here we are, and we finally got an album out, and we're nervous as all hell. Well, I am. I shouldn't talk on behalf of the other guys, but I'm nervous. The industry has changed quite a bit in the last 5 years, and I know you guys are still with us, but I think we're going to need a lot of people support on this one. So help us out. Share this around, spread the word. I think as long as people are getting the opportunity to hear this song or hear the album when it comes out, then I think things are going to be really good for us this year as a band. So I really encourage you guys, if you do dig the single and the music, please share it around and spread the word, and we'll be extremely appreciative of any support that you guys can give us. But most importantly, really hope you enjoy the tunes. As mentioned at the beginning of the episode, selfstarter.com.au, as always, is my second podcast. If you are interested in small business, self-employment, or freelancing, you can go over to selfstarter.com.au, check out the fortnightly blog. Season 1 is over. Season 2 will launch in June of 2019. I've begun recording episodes in advance for that. So if you have any guest recommendations, please let me know ASAP, because I'm starting to get those recordings done. And so if you know anybody that's got their own business or getting ready to launch one, or somebody that's got a really cool way of earning a bit of extra pocket money, maybe he's got a bit of a side hustle or a second job or whatever it might be, shoot me a message on the socials or via the Self-Starter website. Self-Starter, the podcast, Season 1 was a fortnightly podcast. Season 2 will be the same. And you can still listen to those episodes via Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, etc. So it's very easy to find. We'd love to get your feedback. And as said before, if you've got recommendations for guests on Season 2 of the podcast, please let me know. That's it, folks. Episode 167 is complete. Thank you very much for the support, and I will see you all next week. Ta-ta.